scientist estimates a solar megastorm could erupt and wreak havoc on Earth. In today's technologically dependent world, such an event could be catastrophic. It could cause major blackouts and disrupt daily life for some say up to 10 years.
From a team of scientists at the Predictive Science Center in San Diego, California. And what they did was they looked at historical patterns of this type of activity on the sun. Now, every 11 years, the sun goes through cycles of increasing and decreasing activity. Whenever it's in a period of increasing activity, it can happen where solar eruptions happen on the sun and they send particles spewing into space and sometimes toward Earth. And while the occurrence of a catastrophic event is rare, it has happened in the past. And in fact, over 150 years ago in 1859, the largest ever recorded solar storm took place, and it is known as the Carrington event. And this was named after a British astronomer named Richard Carrington, who had observed a large solar flare spewing charged particles into the Earth at about 4 million miles per hour. And from there, he was the first to determine that there was a link between solar activity and geomagnetic fields on Earth. Now, during that event, telegraph stations caught on fire, the major networks had outages, and magnetic fields were disturbed as well. So if this happens now, it could be even more catastrophic.
Earth is wrapped in a kind of cosmic electric blanket surrounded by solar flares 10 times more powerful than anything we've seen in years. The flares bombard the Earth's magnetic field. In fact, some airplanes had to make detours in order to steer clear. And the nation's top scientists are monitoring the power grids. ABC's Sam Champion has been tracking this all day and tells us what those scientists are seeing so far.
These are the eruptions on the surface of the sun. Solar flares more than 500,000 miles high and 10 million times more powerful than a volcanic eruption that sent today's solar storm barreling down to Earth, setting off a white-knuckle watch for trouble. Inside the nation's Mission Control for Space Weather, all eyes were tracking the storm around the clock, looking for impact and watching closely for any new flare-ups on the very active surface of the sun.
And this region really hasn't shown any signs of decay or diminishing, so the threat is still there.
Just the threat is bad news for airlines, power utilities, GPS providers, all who spent the day on the lookout for any disruptions, since the storms are powerful enough to knock out modern communications. Both Delta and American Airlines rerouted several flights just out of precaution. Fortunately, the worst did not occur. Predictions of a powerful storm eased for now. We don't feel the direct effect of these solar flares because the magnetic particles of the sun are invisible. But don't be fooled, because during these solar storms, those particles are raining down over all of us at a speed of about 4 million miles an hour on a very long trip, 93 million miles from the sun to the Earth. Solar storms can be serious. Some examples: Fall 2003. There were blackouts in Europe. Astronauts on the International Space Station had to take cover. In 1989, 6 million people lost power in Quebec, leaving the entire province in the dark. Along with all the threats, there is one beautiful plus. Americans will be able to see a dazzling display of northern lights as far south as Michigan and Maine.
On the sun's surface that touched off a major solar flare expected to arrive at this hour. Highly charged energy from the sun sent hurtling toward Earth. The pictures, well, they're just stunning, and Sam can't wait to tell us much more about this.
That may be the coolest part, Robin, is the fact that we can show you pictures right now. We learn more about the sun every day, and what we do know is that it regularly sends out these bursts of energy, these particles that you'll hear about toward the Earth at about 4 million miles an hour. Now, these pictures are from an eruption that happened on Tuesday, and all of that energy is expected to graze the planet. Now, you can see the atmosphere, well, the sun there, the kind of like edge of the sun there, kind of exploding and sending out those particles and charges. Now, this page from NOAA's Space Prediction Center, look at the lower left-hand side and look at that gauge right there. That shows you in real time the particles that are actually hitting the Earth, and as long as we're in the green, we're in pretty good shape. And right now we are in the green this morning, but they do expect these particles will kind of be racing and grazing over the edge. When those flares are active, entire GPS systems can be knocked out, satellites, power grids disrupted, even some airlines have to reroute their traffic around the poles and not go over that area because of that energy.
Now, Sam, the last time that we had a major solar flare like this, millions of our friends to the north, they lost power.
Yeah, if you look at them, they happen all the time, but some are bigger than others. And if you look back at like 1989, it was a really big one. And in Quebec, in that area, there were about 6 million people without power. It was a bad winter. People were trapped in elevators, that kind of thing. Right now, NASA says they're not taking any special precautions. They say there's no direct danger to individuals. They are looking at the possibility of some communication problems, but we'll just have to follow it throughout the day. There will be very dramatic northern lights over the next couple of days, all the way through Friday. And in some cases, you'll be able to see them around the Great Lakes, into the Great Northwest, and even the Appalachians will be able to see them. They're absolutely beautiful sights.
Those pictures are just absolutely stunning, Sam. Thank you.
Another storm, this one coming from space. A solar storm is hurling 1 billion tons of magnetized particles towards Earth at 2 million miles an hour. That's pretty fast. Navigation and communication systems could take a hit from all the radiation, but on the bright side, literally, the solar flare-ups could create the most dramatic northern lights displays in years.
Well, the sun has unleashed its largest flare in over a decade, and its effects are now being felt here on Earth. So far, the event has triggered radio blackouts, and this weekend, people living in high-latitude regions might actually see beautiful auroras in the sky. RT's Brigida Santos has some of these stunning images from NASA, in her latest report.
The sun has produced 6 sizable flares in the same region since Monday. The 2 most recent were captured Thursday morning by NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. Both flares were massive, but the second is the largest on record since 2006, measuring a whopping X9.3. NASA classifies flares according to strength, placing the weakest in the A class and the strongest, like this one, in the X class. In comparison, the largest flare in history is classified as an X28. A solar flare is a powerful burst of radiation. While harmful rays can't pass through Earth's atmosphere and hurt humans, it can disturb the atmospheric layer that GPS and communications signals travel through, which is why there was a radio blackout following the event. Flares release large amounts of energy into space, which send clouds of electrons, atoms, and ions toward Earth. Scientists say skywatchers in high-latitude regions can expect brilliant auroras resulting from these particles as early as today. The sun is currently heading toward a low-activity period in its natural 11-year cycle, which makes these events all the more puzzling to scientists. In recent weeks, we have seen the devastating effects of extreme weather on Earth, and these abnormal solar flares reveal that extreme weather is also happening in space. In Los Angeles, Brigida Santos, RT.
Este yung